Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT patch rundown video. Today I'll be covering the release patch for set 7, Dragonlands. That's right folks, the day has finally landed as the new set is here. As with any new set, Dragonlands is breathing new life into the game, and quite honestly, this set is fire. Since this is the first patch of the set, there won't really be any balance changes to talk about, so instead we'll be talking about the new set mechanics, augment changes, and a whole bunch of item adjustments. With every new set, there's a ton of information, so we definitely recommend reading the patch notes to get the full scope of everything changed. With that said, let's go ahead and begin by going over the set mechanics for set 7, Dragonlands. Shockingly, one of the new set mechanics for Dragonlands are the newly added dragon units. Dragon is a unique trait for the champions Saifen, Xiaoyu, Idis, Deja, Shyvana, Aurelion Sol, and Ail Shin. The first 4 dragons cost 8 gold to buy and share the same drop odds as 4-cost champions. The last 3 are a whopping 10 gold and share the same odds as 5-cost units. Basically, dragons are powerful. Because of that, dragons take up 2 slots on the board, much like Colossus from set 6. But unlike Colossus, dragons are actually quite good, so it doesn't feel detrimental to have them on your board. This is also helped by the fact that each dragon gives +3 to one of their specific traits. Saifen, for example, counts as 3 Whispers when played. The last quirk of the dragon synergy is bonus health. Oh, and if you want any of those bonuses, make sure you're only playing 1 dragon. That said, there are a couple of augments that make it possible to play more than 1 dragon, and unsurprisingly, they're kinda good. Like, really good. That basically sums up the new dragons, but that's not the only dragon theme of the set. They're also introducing the Treasure Dragon that appears on round 4-7. The Treasure Dragon replaces the Raptors with a completely unique thing for TFT, player choice. Okay, jokes aside, there's plenty of other choices players make in the game, but the Treasure Dragon gives a ton of agency to players. How this round works is each player is offered a shop that usually consists of components, items, or gold. There are some special cases like 3 loaded dice, but those types of offerings are extremely rare. In general, most players will see a few components, maybe 1 completed item, and a bit of gold. The best part about those offerings is that you can re-roll them for 1 gold to get completely new offerings. This can be done as long as you have gold and time to continue rolling, though we don't advise spending your entire bank and savings on re-rolls. Overall, this is a fantastic new system that shows a lot of growth for TFT. We've seen things in the past like armories and most recently augments that provided more choices to players. Historically, TFT has always been shy about giving players a lot of agency because playing around variants is part of the game, but the past few sets we've seen them transition more towards giving players more choices. So far, this mechanic has felt amazing, and we hope it stays in past set 7 just like augments did from set 6. There are a few quirks regarding Treasure Dragon, such as players will be guaranteed 9 components pre-Treasure Dragon, so it doesn't feel like all of your items come from this stage. Also, emblems won't show up, though spatulas can. Honestly, the best way to experience this new mechanic is just to play the new set, as it's quite intuitive. That's really it for the new, but there's more to set 7 than just the dragons. They've also introduced a lot of augment changes. There are a lot of tweaks to augments for Dragonlands, so we do recommend reading the patch notes as there's far greater breakdown than we'll be doing. We mostly want to hit on the big changes from set 6 to 7. One major change is when augments appear. Instead of stage 1, 4, 3, 3, and 4, 6, the new augments are on 2, 1, 3, 2, and 4, 2. Change for the sake of change is always iffy, but once you've played a few games of set 7, it should become clear that the augment round shifts actually feel quite good. Since 2-1 is after the opening PvE rounds, it's a lot easier to make choices on augments as you'll know exactly what your starting board looks like. The 3-2 shift is the least noticeable, but it shortens the gap between the first and second augments, so that much-needed augment arrives just in time. By far, the largest change is pushing the 4-6 augment back to 4-2, but again, this feels better because there's less of a gap between the second and third augment. It does mean players are less likely to have their compositions figured out by 4-2, but that's also a good thing because it means there's more choices. Previously, by the time 4-6 rolled around, it was quite obvious what augment was the best option. Now, there's a bit more wiggle room. Another massive change is being able to re-roll your augment once per game. This is fantastic because sometimes the options just felt bad and now you can choose to re-roll them. Keep in mind this is once per game, so choose wisely when using your re-roll, but again, this is just more player agency being added to the game, and we love to see it. There's a few smaller changes, though still important to know about. The average tier for augments each game is going to be gold, which does add a bit of overall power to each game. This also affects balance a lot, which we'll touch on a few of those changes soon. The other changes worth mentioning are to the Crown and Soul prismatic augments. Previously, these augments provided 2 for 1 trait. Now it's down to 1 plus a champion plus an item. It's hard to say if this makes these augments less appealing, but it does help a lot with balance, so overall, it's a good change. That's it for the major augment system changes, but what about the augments themselves? Well, first off, there's a whole bunch of new ones for the new set. Lots of augments were removed and replaced, which we again recommend looking up to get an idea of what's gone and what's new. But there are a few augments that have stayed from set 6 that come with a few adjustments that need to be talked about. One such augment is Ancient Archives. This is the augment that provides a tome to players, and since emblems seem to be quite powerful this set, it makes sense to move the augment up a tier. More or less, nothing has changed for Ancient Archives since gold augments are the gold standard now, but it's worth knowing that it has gone up one tier. Another augment that's gone up a tier is Binary Airdrop. Binary Airdrop adds a third item to any champion with 2 item slots already filled. Basically, it's a lot of value for one synergy and was considered one of the strongest in set 6. They bumped it up to Prismatic, but keep in mind that one of the reasons Binary was so good in set 6 was because of the Scrap synergy. Since Scrap is gone, Binary does lose out on value. But even then, this is a powerful augment and it does make a lot of sense to bump it up to the Prismatic tier. Hyperroll augment has gone through a makeover and is now called Hustler, and the gold cap has gone from 10 to 20. This makes it a lot easier to use since 10 gold was a bit restrictive past the early game. To match this new and improved version of the augment, they also bumped it up from silver to gold. The golden egg augment also got a bit of a rework. Baseline, they bumped up the number of rounds before hatching from 7 to 10, but anytime a player wins a round, that timer goes down faster. Basically, the overall time per hatch is likely to be the same as before, but anyone with a strong board that hits golden egg augment is going to be quite happy. Since it may be easier to hatch the egg, they did lower the overall gold value by about 10. This way, the high-rolling player that hits the egg and hatches it super fast won't be super omega ahead of the lobby, just super ahead. And the final augment change we want to mention is a nerf to Tiny Titans. Honestly, we all saw this coming because 35 health was a lot of health. That said, they've only reduced it down to 30, so it's not significantly different. It does mean hardcore Lost Streak players will have to transition their board a bit earlier than before, but in general, this augment will still be quite good. Well, that's it for the augments we'll be covering today. Keep in mind that a lot more received changes from set 6 to set 7. Read the patch notes so that you're not one of those players that ends up surprised by the changes. Our last section is about a bunch of item changes they've done in set 7. Again, keep in mind we're not going to go over every single change, just the relevant ones. They have also done a whole bunch of balancing to the Radiant Relic versions of items as well as the Portable Forge Ornn items, so make sure you look up those as well. One last minor thing to note is the consumable Neeko's Help has been renamed to Champion Duplicator. It's still the same item, just a different name and appearance, since it was possible to be confused with there being Neeko's Help with Neeko the Champion in the set. But they didn't do this earlier when Neeko was a champion in previous sets, who knows, but it's a quality of life change nonetheless. Alright, items. Up first is a quick one, as they've changed both Bloodthirster and Hextech Gunblade to now be Omnivamp. This does change each item to be a bit more uniform, but they do still each have their own identity. BT provides a shield while Gunblade heals another allied champion, so they at least differ thematically, plus the stats they give are different. But it does add extra choice for players if they're looking for a healing item, so overall this is a good adjustment to these two items. Another set, another rework to Dragon's Claw. Dragon's Claw no longer deals damage and instead heals the item holder based on the number of champions attacking them. The cooldown between each heal is 2 seconds, and the amount healed is 1.2% of their maximum health per attacking unit. You can guess that this item is quite good on champions with large health pools. In fact, it's amazing on dragons because when this item is on a dragon champion, the effects are increased by 20%. What a shocker, Dragon's Claw is good on dragons. It's honestly a bit funny to see Dragon's Claw go through another rework, but this time it feels like it's the best version. It provides a good amount of magic resist and healing, both of which are default good for a defensive item. And then it also scales well with high health champions, which fits well with the set. Who knows what they'll change next time. One would think with so many high health pool champions, Giant Slayer would be strong, but they unfortunately nerfed it down to 25-50% from 20-60% bonus damage. The threshold for health also got bumped up to 2200 from 1800, so it's a lot less likely to provide the bonus damage. 50% bonus damage isn't the worst, and definitely better than the 40% it was on the PvE, but it's definitely weaker than before. Sure, it can be argued that had they left it at 60%, it would be a must-have item, but considering it's literally called Giant Slayer, it should be a must-have item in a set with dragons. The staple of set 6, Last Whisper, has been adjusted in an interesting way. First off, the armor reduction is now 50% from 70%, which means the item is weaker in general. But they did change it to proc based on auto attacks and not critical attacks, so it's much more consistent. That said, 50% is a noticeable downgrade, and so far not many champions have been utilizing the item. Maybe it needs buffs, or maybe it's just not a necessity for this set as there's not a ton of armor-heavy frontliners. Super quickly, we want to point out that Sunfire Cape went from 150 bonus health to 400. That's quite the increase and does make this item a lot more appealing. They also did a few other changes like decreasing the percent damage down to 1%. They also increased the duration by 2 seconds. In general, it's a net neutral adjustment, and the big change is the increased health. And the final item we want to mention is Hand of Justice. It's been a minute since this item has been meta relevant, so naturally they did a few tweaks to it. Those changes may not end up being all that impactful, as they bumped up the Omnivamp a small amount while reducing the bonus stats from 33 to 30. Unfortunately, this does look like an overall nerf to the item, so sorry Hodge fans, looks like this item is still likely to only be filler for now. That's all for today, folks. Dragonlands is poised to be one of the best TFT sets we've had yet. We'll be covering the meta as always, but our schedule is going to be a bit different. As the meta is always changing, we'll now be doing 2 top 5 composition videos at different points in the patch to help reflect the meta shifts. We'll also be moving around the other videos based on the change, but don't worry, we're keeping the same content cadence. Let us know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on the new set, Dragonlands. Remember to check out the Giant Slayer TFT socials in the description below to keep up to date with any news, shows, or other content. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.